All right, everyone, get ready. Because today we are going deep, deep into the real story of Bonnie and Clyde.
Bonnie and
You
Clyde.
know them, right? The infamous outlaw couple.
Yep.
But, we're going to go past all that Hollywood glitz and glamour to find out, what really made them tick.
Right.
How did their lives, how did they become such a huge part of American history? And we've got a ton of stuff to dig into for you guys.
Yeah.
Historical accounts, we've got newspaper clippings, even an interview with someone who literally walked in Bonnie and Clyde's footsteps.
It's going to be quite the journey, I think, and you'll be surprised by what we find.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So to really get this story, we have to rewind the clock way back to the 1930s.
Okay.
Think Dust Bowl, think banks failing left and right, the Great Depression. Was this just kind of like the setting, or did it really shape Bonnie and Clyde's path?
Oh, it was absolutely a driving force. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Imagine the desperation of that time. I mean, people were losing their farms, their homes, their livelihoods,
Yeah.
their everything.
It's like the rug was pulled out from under them.
Exactly. And they felt betrayed by the system, by the banks, by the government,
Right.
and that created like a breeding ground for distrust,
Right,
but also this weird kind of empathy for those who just said, like, forget it, I'm going to rebel.
right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's where Bonnie and Clyde's story really begins, right?
It does.
Two kids, dirt poor, growing up in West Dallas.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're talking like dirt poor.
Yeah, Clyde's family was so poor when they first landed in West Dallas that
Yeah.
they slept under their wagon for shelter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so for people like Clyde, crime wasn't like, some glamorous option.
Right.
It was survival.
Yes.
It was how, petty theft. It was how a lot of poor kids got by.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Bonnie's story, I mean, it's just as heartbreaking.
Oh, it is. It is. Bright girl,
Yeah.
good in school,
Yeah.
but very limited options as a young woman in poverty.
Right.
She gets married at 15 to a man who ends up in prison,
Oh, wow.
and she just dreamed of a life beyond West Dallas.
Beyond all that.
Beyond all of it, yeah.
So they meet at a party,
They do.
both kind of, yearning for an escape,
Yep.
for
Yeah.
recognition, for something more.
Something better.
But I was surprised to learn that they weren't exactly, criminal masterminds.
No.
What was the reality of their little heists?
Well, the truth is, they were pretty bad robbers.
Really?
Yeah, they were more known for their escapes and their
Mhm.
kind of crazy sprees than for any big scores.
Huh.
Yeah, their motivations were rooted in poverty and desperation,
Yeah.
not some grand criminal ambition.
So not exactly the, the glamorous image we see in the movies and stuff.
Not even close.
Right. And Clyde especially
Yes.
was deeply affected by how brutal the Texas prisons were at the time.
Oh, absolutely. The system was horrific.
Yeah.
I mean, prisoners were practically enslaved. Violence was just rampant.
Yeah.
Clyde himself, he was subjected to repeated sexual assaults, which obviously left him deeply traumatized
Yeah.
and terrified of ever going back.
Right.
Right.
Oh, that's awful.
It's terrible.
I can see how an experience like that would completely change someone's outlook,
Yeah.
Like just twist it.
Yeah.
But there was another side to them, right?
There was.
They weren't just like, cold-blooded criminals.
Exactly. Clyde loved music. He carried his guitar everywhere he went.
Oh, wow.
Bonnie, she was a talented poet, writer.
Mhm.
They both had strong religious beliefs.
So it's like they had this whole
So
other
it's complex,
this whole other complex side.
Yeah, these details remind us that they were complex individuals,
Right.
shaped by a harsh reality,
Right.
but still capable of love, creativity,
Yeah.
faith.
Yeah. But their story's about more than just crime, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's also this fascinating look at the power of media
Yeah.
back in the 1930s.
Yes.
The newspapers, they turned them into celebrities.
Oh, the media frenzy was insane.
Really?
Newspapers, they sensationalized their story.
Right.
They turned them into folk heroes for a public that was just desperate for a distraction
Yeah.
during those dark times.
Right, because it was rough back then.
Oh, it was. And remember, this is the era of wire services,
Right.
basically like the Twitter of their day.
Right.
News was it was traveling like wildfire across telegraph wires.
Wow.
And those photos of Bonnie and Clyde, they were suddenly everywhere.
Yeah, speaking of photos, those
Yeah.
iconic images, especially the one with Bonnie, she's holding a gun and a cigar,
Yeah.
really solidified their image,
Mhm.
as these glamorous rebels.
I know, right?
Kind of comical considering,
Yeah.
their actual criminal skills.
Yeah, so this raid in Joplin, Missouri,
Uh-huh.
that was actually a turning point.
How so?
They accidentally left behind undeveloped film
Oh, no.
with those photos.
Oh, wow.
And because of those wire services, those images were suddenly in newspapers across the entire country.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I guess it's easy to see how people got caught up in the story,
Yeah.
but it also seems kind of irresponsible of the newspapers to glamorize them so much.
I mean, it was the perfect storm,
Yeah.
The public needed a distraction.
Yeah.
The media, they were hungry for a good story.
Of course.
And Bonnie and Clyde, they wanted the recognition.
Yeah.
And suddenly, overnight, they go from small-time crooks to national icons.
Wow, it's crazy how that happened.
Yeah.
But we can't forget the dark side of their story, right?
Right.
The violence, especially the killing of law enforcement officers.
Yeah, while some killings, came directly from the robberies, it's important to understand the context. Most of the lawmen that they encountered,
Yeah.
they were poorly trained.
Real.
Often they were just local farmers, deputized with little more than a shotgun
Oh my God.
and a rusty truck.
Wow.
This wasn't the, organized law enforcement we see today.
Right.
And Clyde, with his prison experience,
Yeah.
he was driven by this desperate fear of being recaptured.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Their lives were ruled by paranoia, adrenaline.
Mhm.
They're constantly on the run,
Yeah.
always looking over their shoulder.
Right.
It was this tragic cycle,
Yeah.
fueled by fear, circumstance, and that ever-present shadow of the media spectacle.
Wow. So now that we've kind of set the stage,
Yeah.
I'm really curious about the inner workings of their gang.
Okay.
Was it just Bonnie and Clyde,
Well,
or were there other people involved?
there were others,
Okay.
and the dynamics of the gang, they shifted over time. Yeah, so in the next part of our deep dive, we're gonna unravel those relationships.
All right.
We'll explore the loyalty, the betrayals,
Yeah.
and we'll trace their journey to its, inevitable tragic end.
Sounds good. So you were saying that other people were part of Bonnie and Clyde's gang.
Oh yeah.
Who are these other figures, and how did they kind of play into the whole story?
Well, I mean, you really can't talk about Bonnie and Clyde without bringing up Clyde's brother,
Right.
Buck Barrow,
Buckborough.
and his wife Blanche.
Blanche.
They joined the gang in 1933.
Okay.
And it just added this whole other layer of complexity to the dynamic.
Were they like willing participants in all this, or did Bonnie and Clyde kind of drag them into it?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And the sources, they kind of paint a mixed picture.
Oh, really?
It seems like Buck, he was eager to join his brother.
Yeah.
He was drawn to the excitement, the notoriety.
Oh, yeah.
But Blanche, she was hesitant,
Really?
more of a reluctant accomplice.
I see.
Just swept up in all the chaos.
I can only imagine what that did to their relationship.
Yeah.
Being on the run, living in fear all the time. Stressful.
Speaking of being on the run, were they just kind of drifting, or did they have some kind of plan?
They weren't, like master strategists or anything,
Right.
but they weren't totally random either.
Okay.
They followed this kind of loop,
Yeah.
moving through Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana,
Mm-hmm.
often stopping to see family
Right.
or lay low for a bit.
So it sounds like family ties
Oh, yeah.
really played a role in their movements.
Huge role.
Right.
They were incredibly close to their families.
Okay.
And those bonds, they really influence their choices. Sometimes to their detriment, actually.
Oh, really? Remember, those family connections, they ultimately played a part in their downfall.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that their downfall was linked to betrayal.
Mhm.
Tell me more about that.
Well, it all comes down to Henry Methvin.
Henry Meth.
This young guy who joined their gang
Okay.
in the final months of their run.
Right.
Methvin, he was desperate. He was facing, some serious charges,
Okay.
and his family, they were terrified.
Yeah.
They saw an opportunity.
The opportunity to like bargain with the authorities.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
They cut a deal, information about Bonnie and Clyde, in
Yeah.
exchange for leniency for Henry.
Wow, so they basically sold him out.
Yeah, it was this heartbreaking betrayal,
Okay.
fueled by desperation and just this desire to protect their own.
So was Methvin like directly involved in setting up the ambush?
The details are still kind of debated, but it's clear that his family's, collaboration with the authorities, it led Frank Hamer, the Texas Ranger, right to Bonnie and Clyde.
Hamer seems like a fascinating character.
Yeah.
What made him so different from the other lawmen,
Right.
that had tried and failed to catch Bonnie and Clyde?
Hamer was a legend.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, in his own time, tough, experienced lawman.
Okay.
Known for being absolutely relentless. Unlike the local sheriffs they had, outsmarted so easily.
Right.
Hamer was methodical.
Oh.
He was strategic. He studied their patterns.
Yeah.
He understood their motivations.
Sure.
He anticipated their move. He was playing chess, not checkers.
It sounds like he was determined to bring them down.
Oh yeah.
No matter what.
He saw them as this menace, this threat
Right.
to the very fabric of society.
Right.
And he dedicated himself to ending their reign of terror.
Wow.
He was driven by a sense of duty.
Okay.
And some would argue, a bit of vengeance.
Yeah.
For the lawmen that Bonnie and Clyde had killed.
So how did Hamer finally corner them?
He used their own patterns against them.
Oh, right.
Knowing that they were drawn to family
Right.
and followed kind of predictable routes.
Yeah.
He laid a trap on this remote road in Bienville Parish, Louisiana.
Right. Okay.
It was desolate, perfect for an ambush.
I can imagine it was pretty tense.
Oh yeah.
For everyone involved.
Absolutely.
Hamer and his men lying in wait.
Yep.
Bonnie and Clyde driving towards their doom, completely unaware.
Totally unaware.
The tension must have been palpable.
Oh yeah.
They even used a trick to slow Bonnie and Clyde down.
They did.
A truck
Mm-hmm.
seemingly broken down, blocking the road.
Yeah, it was a calculated ploy
Wow.
to make sure they couldn't just speed past.
And then chaos.
Chaos. It was brutal.
Yeah.
One-sided.
Wow.
Hamer and his posse, they just unleashed this torrent of gunfire over 100 rounds in seconds.
Jeez.
The car was just riddled with bullets.
Wow.
Transformed into this mangled tomb.
Oh my.
There was no escape. No chance.
That's a chilling end to their story.
It is, but even in death,
Yeah.
these spectacles surrounding Bonnie and Clyde, it didn't end there.
Really.
That's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
How their demise was really just the beginning of their legend.
It's kind of crazy to think that even after that violent end, the story of Bonnie and Clyde didn't really end.
Right. It's like, in a way, that's when the legend really took off.
Oh, wow.
Like even in death, they were still part of this media circus.
So even after the shooting stopped, the cameras kept flashing.
Oh yeah, the media frenzy after they died was even bigger than when they were alive.
Yeah.
Reporters were all over the place, capturing every gruesome detail.
Oh, gosh.
Newspapers were printing extra editions with huge headlines.
Right.
Like imagine if they had Instagram back then.
Right.
The follower count would be off the charts.
That's kind of unsettling. Like people were actually paying to see those images.
Yeah, it says a lot about our fascination with outlaws and anti-heroes, you know.
Yeah.
But it reveals a lot about the media back then and how it shaped how people saw things.
And it didn't stop there, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned that their bullet-riddled car, it became this strange tourist attraction.
Oh yeah, the guy who bought their Ford V8, he took it all over the country.
Really?
Charging people to sit inside
Jeez.
to see the bullet holes. It's kind of a bizarre and disturbing chapter in their story.
It's like it blurs the line between history and entertainment, doesn't it?
It really does, and that blurring it gets even more amplified when we think about the impact of the 1967 film.
Right, Bonnie and Clyde.
Bonnie and Clyde, exactly.
I was wondering when we'd get to that.
Yeah.
The movie, it's a classic.
It is.
But how much of it is actually true?
Well, Hollywood,
Yeah.
they took some liberties. They romanticized their relationship.
Yeah.
They made them seem more sympathetic
Right.
than maybe they were in real life.
So the movie kind of helps solidify their image as these glamorous rebels.
Exactly. It became this huge cultural phenomenon.
Yeah.
It really captured the spirit of the late 60s
Right.
with its themes of rebellion,
Right.
anti-establishment,
Yeah.
like stick it to the man.
It makes you wonder, like, how would their story be remembered today?
Yeah.
If that movie hadn't been made,
Right.
would they have just faded away?
Would they just be a footnote?
Yeah. Yeah, just another footnote in the history of crime.
I mean, think about it. Their crimes, they were pretty small time compared to some of the other big names out there,
Yeah.
like John Dillinger.
Right, Pretty Boy Floyd.
Pretty Boy Floyd, exactly. They weren't masterminds.
Right.
They weren't driven by these big ambitions.
Yeah, it was more about just getting by.
Yeah, their story at its heart, it's one of poverty, desperation, and just this longing for something more.
Yeah, but is their image,
It is.
their rebellious spirit,
Mm.
that tragic romance, it still fascinates people almost a century later.
I know their story, it taps into this archetype,
Yeah.
the outlaw couple, forever young,
Right.
forever defiant,
On the run.
always on the run. There's this allure to that, this sense of freedom, this rejection of all the rules.
Right.
It resonates with people.
Yeah, and the media.
Yes.
They played a huge role in shaping that whole narrative.
Absolutely, both during their lives
Yeah.
and for decades after.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like a textbook example of how media can turn people into icons.
Right.
Blur the lines between fact and fiction and,
Yeah.
and really shape how we understand history.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Bonnie and Clyde,
Yeah.
what do you think is the most important thing for our listeners to take away from all this?
I think their story, it challenges us to look past that romanticized version
Right.
and really consider the complexity of their lives,
Mhm.
the things that led them to make the choices they made,
Right.
and the unintended consequences of their actions.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that history is never simple,
No.
and that even the most notorious figures,
Yeah.
they're products of their time.
Makes you think. It also makes us think about, the power of media.
Oh yeah.
How it shapes how we see things,
Mm-hmm.
and how it can create these legends that last for generations.
Even out of tragedy. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
We'll see you next time for another exploration of history's hidden depths.